So, you've decided to read Gardens of the Moon and you just got to the end and you thought, what the heck? Well, I can help you get that all worked out. Now, it started in the prologue where you had this little guy and his name was Parin. Ganos Parin. And for a lot of the book, you could say he's probably our main guy, our main character. And he was talking to a guy named Whiskey Jack. Whiskey Jack's got some sweet hair in the back. And then he was also, there was another guy here, but I don't know if it explicitly says who it was. I think it was, no, it does say it was Fiddler. And Fiddler's got a fiddle, I assume. And what they're looking at is they're looking at the mouse quarter with this culling sort of thing. And Whiskey Jack's a Bridgeburner. So you know all about those guys if you read the book. And they're watching as a whole bunch of people are screaming and stuff, and there's this crap going on. And the reason that's happening is because there's this change in command with the Emperor going out, and then we have this new person named Surly, and she is kind of in charge now, and then becomes the Empress. What happens is we get Parin, little Parin, all grown up now. Oh, before that, we get this girl, and we don't have a name for this girl right off the bat. But she's talking with this creepy old lady named the candle lady. I don't remember. Anyway, talking with her. She's creepy. She just wants to go do some stuff. She's a fisherman's daughter. And so what happens is some people come in and they are being mean, these army guys. And one of them smacks the heck out of this lady, the older lady, and she falls on this fisherman's girl and she dies. And so when she does that, she's like, I can't remember what she says, but it's something like you'll, now we're one, prod and pull or whatever. Or that's actually maybe when the next two guys come. Anyway, they're on their way this way with the army that's of stuff going on this other continent. And so then we get two shadowy people coming in. They're both dressed in kind of black hoods. And they have these dogs. And they are scary. And so they go through. And this one, Cotillion, he goes up to the fisher girl and is like, hey, I'm going to use you for a bunch of stuff that I need done. And she's like, okay. And then he goes into her. But like, in like a conscious, or whatever. I don't know. But now this girl is named Sorry, which makes you think, like, is that what Cotillion's saying? Right? Is he like, my bad? Like, maybe a better name for her would be like, my bad, right? And so now she's become like this rad assassin. And I gave her fangs. Okay? And so she goes up to Dujek One Arm, who's lost his arm in some battle that we'll find out maybe early on in the second book. I don't know. And so she goes up. She's only like 12 years old, and she goes up to Dujek, who works with the Malazans, who all these guys are Malazans here. And the Malazans are going around to different continents, and they're like, hey, we're going to take over. And then other people are like, no, you're not. And she's like, I want to be part of that. And he's like, how old are you? And she's like, 12. He's like, that's great. Okay, you're a part of it. So they get on a boat and they go over to Genabackis, where most of the book takes place. And there's Dujek. My pens are running out. I gotta get new ones, I guess. Dujek, and I'm gonna do one arm, just so you remember. OA means one arm. And so they go over and they start fighting at Genabackis. But before that, we have Parin, who's over here, and he meets someone named Lorne. Now, Lorne is Surly, aka Lassine's right-hand lady. Okay? And that means that she does like all the coolest stuff. And Lorne has an Ototaro sword, which makes it so magic doesn't do anything, and around her, and like the gods that are around her can kind of leave her alone a little bit. I don't know if that's, it's basically that. And Ototaro's red, and it's like super cool. And so she's around where stuff is going on, and she finds that there's a place where a bunch of these army guys got like slaughtered by dogs. And she's like, whoa, 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 holy crap. And then she's with someone named Topper. He shows up, or something. It might have been that Topper showed up, and I think he's got like part Tist Andy in him, like some of these other people do too. Okay, so she's going to investigate a bunch of people dying, and Parin shows up, and he's like, whoa, I want to be a part of things too. Now that I'm all grown up, I want to be like this captain. I have this sword that I haven't killed anyone with. And she's like, and then he's like, come on. And he wants to be a part, and Topper takes him to like talk to the Empress or whatever, and she's going to send him over to Genabackis too, where a lot of this is taking place. But before that, Parin goes and talks, he goes home and he talks to Tavor, his younger sister. And there's also Felicin, but she's playing with her cats or something in the back. And then there's also Gamut, who's like their butler or something. And Parin, or they're all parents, but Ganos, he's like, hey, I'm totally the main character in this story. And Tavor's like, and then we don't hear of Tavor or Felicin or Gamut anymore in the book, but she's like, and then that's just the end of them. So Parin goes over and goes to Genabackis, and we have a whole bunch of people there. We have Kruppa, who is like this big jolly guy who says way too much and not enough at the same time. And he's friends with Crocus, who's kind of like this assassin dude, or he's like a thief. We have Rallick, who's a legit assassin, and he's going around in this city named Darujhistan, where all these people live, where most of the stuff happens. But before that, before we get to Darujhistan, we gotta go to Pale. And what's happening in Pale is we have the Malazan Empire, who's been fighting the people of Pale, and Whiskey Jack's there, Fiddler's there, a bunch of Bridgeburners, and we have mages who are like legit cadre mages. One's name is Tattersail. One's name is Tashrin. One name's Hairlock. And Hairlock gets killed at this battle, and they turn him into a puppet to fix stuff. So, they're at the Siege of Pale. They're fighting this, which is, Pale is against the Malazan Empire. We have Moonspawn, which is like this big floating city. And on top of Moonspawn, standing there, we have Animander Rake, which we're like, that's definitely the bad guy. in this book, and he's a Tist Andy. But he turns out to be like super cool. And so he's helping this city of Pale from Whiskey Jack and all them. And he zaps Hairlock and or whatever, and like Tashrin. Anyway, there's Night Chill and Bellardan, who are also CAD mages. And Bellardan's like massive. And there's this big mess. And underneath the city, there's Whiskey Jack and the Bridgeburners, and Fiddler's like, I don't have a good feeling about this. And Whiskey Jack's like, you always say stupid stuff. And then he's like, no, really, we should get out of here. And then he's like, fine, just for a sec. And then some of them leave. The tunnels collapse, and they lose like 1,000 Bridgeburners. And then Fiddler's like, dang it, I always do this. And Whiskey Jack's like, yeah, that's right, you actually do. And Mallet's there, he's the healer. And Quick Ben is like a cool mage. And anyway, the Siege of Pale starts to get a little hairy, and Moonspawn's like, I'm gonna just leave now. And so that's when everyone's like, wow, Tashrin is a straight douche, because he was fighting us. You know, Tashrin's supposed to be fighting Moonspawn and stuff, and he zapped us. And then a lot of the book is like, Tashrin's a big wiener. And so Hairlock turns into a puppet and starts going around in realms, and chaos starts to make him a little bit weird. And he starts to get chased by dogs, the dogs of dark. And it chases him all the way to where Parin and Tattersail. First, Parin's like, hey, can I put my arms down? And Tattersail's like, no way. And then, like, you turn the page and they're doing it. And then a dog shows up when they're doing it. And then Parin kills the dogs. And then I might be getting some of the timeline stuff wrong, but he kills the dogs, and then he touches the blood, and then is like, woo! And then he gets turned into this other realm inside of a sword. Inside of a sword named Draconis, named Dragnipur. And inside the sword, there's like a carriage, and there's all this crap happening, and everyone, when they see the sword, they're like, whoa. And they don't want to go into this big black sword. But he goes in there, and he gets out of there. And so there's another part where Tattersail's doing like these she's playing this deck game where it's called the Deck of Dragons, and she shows like the Knight of Death card comes up, and Opon comes up, which is a Jester of Chance, which has a sister and a brother, Opon. And then they're kind of messing with Parin. And so Parin thinks that his sword is kind of like enchanted by Opon. Like either things will go so right, like a perfect D20 or a perfect D1, like a 1 roll or a 20 roll. One of the two things happens. And the same sort of thing with Crocus. Now, in the city, there's all this stuff going on. Remember that the Malazans are trying to get into... take over Darujhistan like they did for Pale. And so Whiskey Jack's like, hey, remember what we did in Pale, where that worked out so great? And then Fiddler's like, he's like, we're going to do that again. We're going to go back into the ground and like lay a bunch of explosives. And Fiddler's like, whatever. And they have a Barghast named Trots. And Trots is like one of my favorites. And he's a Barghast who's related. He's super big. And you'll find other people that are very big in this. And so Opon also... when Crocus is going around trying to steal stuff, and he's looking at this girl who's like naked, and he really likes her because he's young. He's seen naked people before because he's like friends with thieves and stuff. But he steals a bunch of her stuff, and her name's Chalice. And then he goes back and he gives her her stuff back. And she's like, "You're an idiot." And he's like, "Come on. I'm going to be back one day, but I'm going to be like with a bow tie. And you're going to marry me. I'm going to make you my wife." And she's like, "Get real." And then even as we're reading it, we're like, "Get real." But we kind of root for it. But we also, he has a crush on Absalar, who shows up with Whiskey Jack and all that stuff. Okay? So Crocus is going around, and he's getting caught in the middle of this assassin war that's going on. And if you've read it, you know that there's assassins within the city. You know that there's assassins sent from Anomander Rake. Rallick's caught in the middle of it. And you see this coin that sometimes happens, which means that Opon's kind of taking care of him. And people like Lorne and everyone's like, we got to get rid of this guy who Opon's helping. And there's all this crazy stuff that happens. And so Parin shows up and he's like, "Hey, everyone, Lorne sent me. Apparently I'm in charge now." And Picker's like, "All right." And then and he goes to where the Bridgeburners are at a tavern or at a different place, and they are playing cards, and they're like, "Hey, want to play cards with us?" And he's like, "Nah." But secretly he kind of would really like to. And so Sorry, aka My Bad, goes up and stabs Parin and is like, "My bad," and then looks at the camera like, and everyone's like, "Shoot, Sorry's a jerk." And so that's one part where he's dead and he's at Hood's Gate and he's looking around, and which is like the death realm, and he gets out of it. Like he comes back, and that freaks everyone out, but he starts kind of sort of being in charge. Now Lorne goes out and she's like, "I have this idea. Moonspawn's right by close to Darujhistan, and that's a big pain. But we're going to get rid of him by going to this burial place where a guy's wrapped in like chains. This Jaghut guy who's like an original psycho. Now the Jaghut, we'll learn more about them in the series, but they can be real jerks sometimes. And she's going to let him out, and she needs to know where he is. And only Tool, this guy named Onos Tulan, knows where to go. And he comes out of the ground at one point and like stabs a guy and helps everyone out and takes her to where the Jaghut is. And in the meantime, there's a guy named Talk who becomes best friends for a moment with Parin. And he's a Claw. And the Claw are also assassins, so they're kind of involved, and they're experts in infiltrating things. So there's a bunch of stuff going on in Darujhistan, and Talk's like talking with Parin, and Parin's like, "Hey, are you being an assassin right now? Or are you being a Claw right now, or are you being my friend?" And he's like, "I'm being your friend." And that's when we first cry in the series, because it's just so sweet. And so what happens is they let this guy raced out, and while they're doing that, all these people are at a party, and there's also this eel. He's not an actual eel. We find out who it actually is. And the eels got involved with the politics, and Baruch is involved. Baruch's like a mage guy, and there's people like Turban Orr, who's council members of the city, who go to him, and he's like, "Hey, let's just play ball with the Malazans and stuff, and then they'll be good to us." And Anomander Rake comes to Baruch and is like, "That's so stupid." And so they go to this party when they all have masks, and there's a lady named Lady Simtal who's throwing it. And there's a duel there, and Rallick kills the dude, and then he gives us a dagger. No, Murillo, who's also friends with Kruppa and stuff, he is doing Lady Simtal, and then after Rallick and stuff, they go in and is like, "Here's a dagger," and she kills herself. Okay? And so Crocus also has an uncle who named Mammoth or something. And he's cool. I like him. And when the guy Raced comes out, Anamander Rake sends a whole bunch of Tistandi guys who can turn into dragons. Sends some of those, and they're fighting them, and it's like going crazy, and they like rip them apart or something. And then he like goes into Mammoth, and then Mammoth's doing a bunch of stuff, and there's like a whole bunch of crap going on. And while that's happening, Parin's like, am I being used? And he has a dagger, his sword in the thing, and he wants to like break it. And then Lorne dies. Tattersail's going out to bury Nightchill with Bellerdan. And while they're doing that, like a bunch of stuff happens. It's like, and then a little baby's born out of the three of them being blown up. Or the two of them, or whatever. And then there's like, and then Tattersail's little, and then Parin's like, that's weird. I don't know if I feel the same way about her anymore. And then walks off, and then she can kind of talk to Parin in his mind. And so it ends with someone throws an acorn, and then the acorn like becomes a prison for the Jaghut named Raced. And at the same time, Crocus, who's kind of being helped by Opon a little bit, is fighting like the most awesome assassin named Vorkan. Anyway, my things aren't working anymore. And throws a brick at her, and she gets knocked out. And then at the end of it, we're like, whoa, that was like crazy coconuts. And so at the end of the book, we have, we also have Kaladin Brood, who is kind of allied with Anamander Rake, and he has this guy named Calor who's been there a long time. Brood has like a big sweet hammer. There are the Mott crew, the Mott Irregulars, who are kind of wrapped up into all this, and they're saying, elsewhere on this continent, there's like this other situation going on with this Panian seer, and he's like this other crazy guy who we'll find out in book 3. That's maybe my favorite book, but really my favorite one's like 8, but I think book 3 is a contender, and we'll see some crazy stuff where some of these people will go and now deal with that threat. But some of them, a few of them, Fiddler, Callum. Oh, and we have this guy Circle Breaker who's cool, who worked for the eel, who Kruppa also goes into dreams and talks to Krull and talks to people that way. So don't forget that. But we have Kruppa. No, we have Crocus. We have Absalar, who's now like been healed of some of that, but is still like a wicked assassin. And Fiddler and Callum, and they're on their way to 7 cities, or they're on their way to drop off Absalar. But first, before that, they're like, we could actually probably make a little bit of a detour to 7 cities, which is this other continent, and do a bunch of other cool stuff. And so we will find out maybe some of that cool stuff in book 2. Okay? So I hope this helped. And I will see you after we've read book 2. I'll make sure I have another pen, and I'll help you kind of get your bearings again for what happened. All right, bye.